All right, good afternoon. It is 1 o'clock, and maybe we have a couple more people coming inside, so we'll get started just a moment. Well, my name is Jim Karamanis. I'm the Director of IT Design and Development here at the Library of Congress. Thank you for joining us today. This, of course, is our Congress.gov virtual public forum about access to legislative information. I've been a part of the Congress.gov effort from the beginning, which is a little over a decade now, unbelievably, and I'm proud to lead the team that delivers Congress.gov to the public every single day. On behalf of us, all of us here at the library, as well as the data partners who make Congress.gov possible, thank you for participating today. We really appreciate it. We've been hosting this public forum since 2020, and this is our third year doing an in-person component, so we're hybrid this year. We have people online and inside here. I'd like to introduce Andrew Weber. Andrew is the product owner of Congress.gov, and he will be our master of ceremonies today. But before Andrew joins us at the podium, I'd first like to introduce Aslihan Bullet, who is the Law Librarian of Congress, to kick us off.
Thank you for the introduction, Jim. I'm Aslihan Bullet, and I serve as the Law Librarian of Congress. The Law Library provides support for public users of Congress.gov by serving as subject matter experts to assist in its development, by answering reference questions from public patrons, and by providing webinar-based Congress.gov trainings. We invite you to visit our site, law.gov, to receive assistance with your Congress.gov reference questions through Ask a Librarian, or sign up for one of our Congress.gov webinars on our Legal Research Institute page. We have two presentations for you from the Law Library today. Robert Brammer, one of our Congress.gov subject matter experts, will provide you with an update on highlights of Congress.gov enhancements that have been made to the site over the past year. After that, Jay Sweeney, our Assistant Law Librarian for Collections, will provide remarks that focus on the progress of the Law Library's digitization projects, to include the digitization of the Supreme Court records and briefs and the U.S. Congressional serial set, and recent developments with other projects such as letters of delegates to Congress, United States reports, and U.S. treaties. And with that, I will turn it over to Robert.
All right, thank you. Okay, to start with, in partnership with the Office of the Clerk of the House of Representatives, we added access to House roll call votes from 2023 to present on the Congress.gov web app, as well as access to the beta version of the House vote endpoints in the Congress.gov API. There are multiple ways to access it. Roll call votes are readily accessible from the Congress.gov homepage. In the Recent section, you can click on Roll Call Votes. On this page, the House session links for the 118th and 119th Congress is linked to the data. Earlier Congresses direct you to the House Clerk's website, and the Senate links to Senate.gov. To begin searching for House roll call votes, you can use the global search box on the home page. Change the selection in the drop-down menu to All Congresses and type Entity:"Vote and click Search. You can then use the Filters menu on the left to narrow down your results. You can also choose to download your search results at the top of the screen. You can sort your results from newest to oldest, click Save this search at the top, and then choose to receive email alerts whenever a new roll call vote is available. If you visit a member profile page for a member of the House, you can now click on Roll Call Votes, filter the results by Congress, and you can download the results. You can also choose to get alerts at the top of the screen to receive an email alert whenever that particular member votes. Turning to the API, House roll call vote endpoints cover all votes associated with the legislation from 2023 to present. Endpoints include a list level and item level, along with a member votes level, which shows how each member of the House voted on a particular piece of legislation. We've worked to provide documentation about the API, user guides, a changelog that details changes to the API, and opportunities for feedback. To use the API, you have to get an API key, which you'll hear more about later in the forum. We have added the new Congressional Research Service Products Collection that's searchable within Congress.gov. This collection includes all publicly available non-confidential CRS reports, testimony by CRS analysts, infographics, and more. This new collection is available on the Congress.gov site as well as an endpoint in the API. You can find descriptions for each CRS product type on the About CRS Products page. Searches from the Congress.gov homepage search bar return CRS products and all other collections depicted in the Limit Your Search filter. Since the initial launch, we've made monthly enhancements and refinements to accessing the collection, like providing the option to include CRS products in your saved search and set up an email alert to receive an email when a new CRS product matches your search query. CRS products are now available on the Congress.gov site. Links to figures, tables, and related CRS products increase the discoverability of related information. You can also download an audio file to listen to the text of any CRS product. There is a new Congress.gov search form for CRS products. It has filters to limit your search by topic, author, type, date, and status. In addition to searching words and phrases, you can also search by date range. The Congress.gov API provides bulk access to CRS products. CRS report endpoints provide more guidance about the new list level and detail level endpoints, which you'll hear more about later in the forum. Also wanted to mention that the browse pages now include links to CRS products and Law Library of Congress reports. Congress.gov supports the dual purpose of conducting historical legislative research as well as tracking current legislation. We have added a great deal of content from the historical Senate executive journals from the 1st through 43rd Congresses, as well as the House journals from the 1st through 43rd Congresses. Using the search bar, select all Congresses, enter your word or phrase query, check the Senate Executive Journal under the Journals filter on your search results page. And from there, you select a search result from the list, and you can view a text version of the Senate Executive Journal page. You can also use the View Source Images link to display an image of the original print page. Keep in mind the metadata for this collection is limited at this time. We have also migrated the Congressional Globe and Annals of Congress from our Century of Lawmaking site to Congress.gov. These are predecessors to the Congressional Record. The Congressional Globe covers the years 1833 to 1873, so it includes debates on many significant events in American history, including the Civil War and a portion of Reconstruction. You can locate the Globe by clicking on the Browse page at the top, select a Congress between the 23rd and 42nd Congresses, and then look under the heading Debates of Congress. You can also find the House and Senate journals and the Congressional Activity Accordion in the Browse directory. The Globe is legacy data, so it's not yet full-text searchable, so it's a good idea to use the indexes or browse by date. With the addition of CRS products into Congress.gov, we've also enhanced access to the appropriations tables. The CRS Appropriation Status Table is an online tool for tracking legislation that provides annual funding for federal programs, projects, and activities. It displays the status of regular appropriations bills, continuing resolutions, supplementals, and budget resolutions. Links to CRS products are now available from the Appropriations Status Table to products on Congress.gov. Additional resources for research are available on that page, including a video on resources for researching and tracking appropriations of related legislation, and tools from the Congressional Budget Office and usaspending.gov. The Office of the Legislative Counsel of the U.S. House of Representatives maintains statute compilations of public laws that either do not appear in the U.S. Code or that have been classified to a title of the U.S. Code that has not been enacted into positive law. Each statute compilation incorporates the amendments made to the underlying statute since it was originally enacted. The compilations are published by GPO, and Congress.gov links to them on GovInfo. You'll find the link under Bill Searches and Lists on the Congress.gov homepage. We also published links to the U.S. Statutes at Large collection on LOC.gov from the Browse page for the 1st through 81st Congresses. We have also made improvements to the quality of search results. We've improved the relevancy sort to no longer pre-sort by Congress, although you can still use the Congress filter to limit your results to a particular Congress. When downloading legislation search results, we added the ability to choose the policy area subject to include only the main subject assigned to each result. You can also check the legislative subject terms when you want to include those. In addition, you can now choose to include the latest tracker stage when you download legislation search results. We've added 2 new prepared field queries, passed House and Senate on the same day, and action by House and Senate on the same day. Within the legislation advanced search, which is available from the advanced search link to the right of the Congress.gov logo, we've improved searching action codes by date or chamber. Under Action/Status, you click on Search Action Codes by Date or Chamber, and using this, you can search legislation that the House passed within 1 month and the Senate passed the following month. Note that this tool reflects the date options based on the selection you made in the Congress section, and unless you change it, that is the 119th Congress by default. United States legislative markup format for slip laws in Congress.gov was recently released in beta. USLM is a modern format that offers improved default display for slip law text and is easier to read. This format is available in Congress.gov for most slip law texts from the 113th Congress to present. And later in the forum, you'll hear more about access to law texts, including USLM, in Congress.gov. Last thing I want to mention is we are conducting an upcoming user research effort, and we'd really appreciate your help with it. We're looking for 7 to 10 people who are willing to participate in a 60-minute virtual interview session during the weeks of October 20th and 27th. If you're interested, please send an email to the email address you see up on the screen. And with that, I will turn it over to Jay Sweeney.
Thank you, Robert, and good afternoon. I'm pleased to represent the accomplishments of my law library colleagues to digitize and make available key legal material, which I will review with you this afternoon. The Law Library website, or law.gov, links to Congress.gov from the homepage and highlights Congress.gov under Researcher Resources. Also, law staff train the public on Congress.gov regularly, quarterly, in fact, in webinars that can be signed up through our Legal Research Institute section on our website. The Law Library supports Congress.gov through our blog, In Custodio Legis, and by answering thousands of legal research questions through Ask a Librarian. Both are linked from the Law Library homepage and Congress.gov, cementing this partnership. The Law Library supports Congress not only by serving constituents, but also by writing reports to Congress on issues of public law. Whenever possible, we make these reports available to the public through our website. The collection goes back to the 1940s, which current reports are added to this collection as they are published. As you know, Century of Lawmaking was moved to a new platform, sharing between Law Library and Congress.gov, and is still getting much use. 2 collections, the Letters of Delegates to Congress and American State Papers, are so well used that we are still undergoing improvements. We're working on providing individual metadata for each letter or component within the collection, so that you would, for example, be able to search all the letters from Benjamin Franklin or John Hancock. These should be released in the next few months. The Law Library is the only free online source for U.S. treaties, 1776 through 1984. This year marks the 10th anniversary of the start of many of our historical collections being made available to the public for the first time in online format. The U.S. Statutes at Large is volume level, but has drop-down menus of every bill and date available to help search. The United States Code and CFR are broken down by item for easy searching and browsing. And the United States Reports goes back to 1754 through the 21st century. The Law Library's initiative to digitize the U.S. Congressional serial set in collaboration with the Government Publishing Office has completed its 5th year. The objective of this project has been to digitize and make available the serial set volumes dating back to 1817 through 1995. The Law Library has inventoried and digitized the serial set documents, and GPO is cataloging each serial set document and authenticating the digital files. The library is displaying the serial set as a digital collection on law.gov. The last remaining volumes have now been prepared for digitization, and the contract with the vendor is concluded, and there are about 100 or so volumes that remained, which are brittle and poor condition or with large foldouts that are being digitized in-house in our digital imaging lab. So this represents about 15,000 volumes. The significant accomplishment for the Law Library is that all 409,110 documents in the serial set have been inventoried, evaluated, prepared for digitization, and sent off to be digitized. The law staff have developed and implemented a workflow to create MARC records for monographs from GPO mods data as it is made available through GovInfo API. 100,000 MARC records have been created by the Law Library, with more records already queued up for this publishing workflow. Our target this past fiscal year has been to oversee the receipt of these digitized, authenticated volumes from GPO and to ensure that the digital files and corresponding metadata are integrated into the library's workflow for presentation on the library's public website. The U.S. Reports project began 10 years ago with a desire to make these opinions free to use and reuse for all. We wanted to create useful metadata for each case and had many willing and interested law students to handicraft this metadata. What resulted was so popular, we expanded to 2012 and will expand to include up to 2017 by the end of this year. We will continue to expand this collection and connect it to our newest collection, the Supreme Court Records and Briefs. The Law Library is one of 10 depository libraries for print briefs, and the collection we are digitizing consists of approximately 27,000 bound volumes representing the years 1832 to 2012, and then continuing as briefs are bound. Our performance target this past year has been to prepare 1,400 Supreme Court Records and Briefs volumes for digitization. We were pleased to say that we're able to fulfill this target in large matter due to contractual assistance that we have to inventory the collection at the document level. And so far this fiscal year, our law staff have prepared and sent 1,800 volumes to the vendor for digitization. With 27,000 volumes in our collection, at the end of the third quarter this year, 14,926 volumes have been inventoried at the document level, representing 55% of this collection. Discussions continue with the Supreme Court Library to explore potential collaboration on the metadata to support the Supreme Court Records and Briefs. Past discussions have resulted in the Supreme Court sharing metadata for 19th century cases. As of April this year, the Law Library signed a cooperative agreement with the University of Washington Law Library. The University of Washington Law Library will ship their unbound Supreme Courts and Records and Briefs collection to the library for digitization. That library is inventorying their own collection using the law library's data points and comparing each party's respective holdings to identify any overlaps or gaps and to share information with the law library. For the remainder of this period and on into next year, we will continue inventorying this collection and coordinating these efforts with our partners. Thank you.
Thank you, Jay and Robert, and thank you to the Law Library for the excellent update. At this time, please welcome Dr. Karen Donfried, the Director of the Congressional Research Service. Karen?
Thank you, Andrew. Welcome, everybody. It's great to be with you. We're also going to be being joined later by Kevin McCumber, Clerk of the House of Representatives, Jackie Barber, Secretary of the Senate, and we're also going to be joined by members of their staff. And those folks work incredibly closely with the CRS, Congress.gov team, to ensure that members of Congress and their constituents have optimal access to House and Senate-owned data through the Congress.gov platform. I also want to acknowledge our GPO and GAO colleagues who work with us as members of the Congressional Data Task Force. One of the accomplishments from this past year that we're excited to highlight is the release of CRS products in HTML from both Congress.gov and the Congress.gov API. CRS and the library's Congress.gov team worked hard to meet a March deadline for that effort, and we're gratified to see how this has improved the discoverability, accessibility, and usability of CRS products. Andrew Ryder from CRS will be presenting later today on the API and House vote data. Right now, though, you have another treat, which is I have the pleasure of introducing 3 presentations by CRS colleagues about CRS support of Congress.gov. We have with us Amy Swantner and Emily Fraser, who are librarians with subject matter expertise in congressional data. One of their many responsibilities is working directly with the House and Senate clerks who are responsible for maintaining the records of Congress. CRS works with House and Senate clerks to ensure that the data they deliver to the library are accurately represented in Congress.gov. Amy will demonstrate CRS products in the CRS.gov website. Emily will show recent enhancements to law texts. And then we also have Jean Dennis from our American Law Division, who will provide an update about our very popular Constitution Annotated. So with that, I will turn it over to them. Thanks so much.
Good afternoon. As has already been mentioned, we added CRS products to the Congress.gov main website in March of 2025, and we also made them available in the API. The standalone site that had been available since 2018 has been retired, and we have in place redirects for those URLs. So if you had any bookmarks, they should still work. But we do encourage you to resave those bookmarks to the current URLs. So from the Congress.gov homepage here, the CRS status table is available, the appropriation status table is available. And as Robert mentioned, this table has links that go to bills and reports and CRS reports all on Congress.gov here. And this table is maintained by appropriations experts in CRS. From the home page, you can search CRS products along with the other collections, and this is one of the advantages of adding the products to Congress.gov. So if you're just starting your research and you have a general topic and you're not sure what material might be available, you can search across all collections on Congress.gov, including the CRS products. And then once you have your results, you can use the filters on the side to narrow down to only the CRS products. And you have all of the regular functionality that you're familiar with from the other collections. You can change your sort order. You can save your search. So you can save a search that includes CRS products along with other collections, or a search that is only CRS products, and then you can set up an alert and be alerted when new products are added to that search or things have changed. You can also download your results, and for CRS products, your download will include your product number, your title, your Congress.gov URL, the publication date, the author, and the topics. And then, of course, for the text, you would use that URL to link over to the site. You can also use the filters on the side to narrow even further. Here I've narrowed the search to only reports of the different CRS product types. And then if I go into a report, so you can see we have all of the metadata that you see in the search results, as well as referenced legislation, topics, and the authors. And we actually have the Congressional view here. So if you're accessing this site and you're not on Capitol Hill, you're not going to see things that say for Congressional users only. You can download the PDF, and if the report has been updated, you'll see the PDF version history here, so you can get to older versions of the report. But the big enhancement here really is this HTML version. So it's fully interactive. I can click on things within the table of contents there and move down the report. And as was also mentioned in, let's see, when was that? In May, we added the search form for the reports. So it's an easier way if you have more criteria about a report that you want to narrow your search from the beginning, you can use this search form. So here I'm just doing a word search on legislative branch and 2025, and then I've chosen a topic, appropriations, not that anyone's thinking about that right now. And then I have my search results here. And then I'm going to go into this first report. And if I move down the table of contents here, I wanted to show you figure 3. And this is an interactive graphic. So the HTML version also allows us to include things like these interactive graphics. So I can narrow down what I'm seeing here. And let's see, I don't know what that was supposed to be, sorry. Okay, and then finally, as was mentioned, the CRS reports are also available in the API. You can get the list of reports here, and you can use the parameters to set a date range. And then if you have the report number, you can get all of the metadata about the report. And again, you get that URL so that you can get to the full text of the report. And that's what I have for you today. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Emily Frazier. I'm with the CRS Congress.gov team. Just going to switch this over here. So I'm going to be presenting on some of the features in Congress.gov that provide access to law texts, both current and historical. Some of the features I'm going to be demoing today have existed for a while in Congress.gov, but have had enhancements in the last year or so. We also have some totally new features to show you today. So one of the easiest ways to access law text in Congress.gov, especially if you're looking for the current Congress's enacted laws, is the Public Laws and Statutes link right here from the homepage, which will take you to the Browse Statutes at Large and Public Laws page. So this browse page will always default to the current Congress, but using this dropdown here, you can browse statutes at large and public law text and information going back to 1951, which is the 82nd Congress. So I'm actually going to start with the 99th Congress to look at statutes at large for a moment. So these pages, what's nice about them is that you get this table formatted view of the statutes at large and by extension the laws that were enacted from that Congress. So these statute citation and public law number columns are sortable if you want to flip your view to see the older items first. The link from the statute citation column here will take you to a PDF that is just for the one law that you're looking at. And the bill number link over here will take you to the bill landing page for the entire bill in Congress.gov, which also provides access to that statutes at large text. So going back to the current Congress now, I want to show you how these pages look a little bit different if you are looking for a Congress in which statutes at large are not yet available. Statutes at large are not generally published until a few years after the end of the Congress, and so in their absence, Congress.gov instead provides access to slip law texts from these same browse pages as the most recent text option. So you can identify which kind of text you're going to be getting on this browse page by where this PDF link is appearing. So on the current Congress, you can see that PDF link is on the public law number column, which tells you that you're going to be accessing a slip law text from there rather than a statute at large text. One other thing to note about this page is that laws will actually appear on this page before that slip law text has been made available by the Government Publishing Office. So at times you may see laws on this page that have a law number, a bill number and title, and a date, but don't actually have access to the text yet. However, the page automatically updates when those law texts do come in. So if you're keeping an eye on recently enacted laws, you can keep an eye out for the text that way. So now I'm going to go into a current Congress bill to show an additional enhancement that was just released in beta in Congress.gov. So we've added as the default view for slip law text, United States Legislative Markup, or USLM text in beta. USLM is a modern web-friendly display that is part of data modernization collaboration between the House of Representatives, the Senate, the Library of Congress, and the Government Publishing Office. The previous default view is still accessible using the TXT link next to text available as is the PDF, which continues to provide a complete and accurate display of legislation and law texts. We're really excited to be bringing this beta release of USLM texts for slip laws because they're quite user-friendly and much nicer to look at than the previous plain text display, especially if you're on a different size screen like a mobile device or a tablet or even just a smaller computer. These USLM beta texts are available from the 113th Congress through the current Congress. All right, so now we're going to jump much further back in time. So the browse pages that we looked at before go back to 1951. But Congress.gov is also now providing improved access to law texts for 1950 and earlier. So I've navigated to Browse by Congress, and I'm jumping to the 35th Congress and opening this Laws accordion box. On this page, the laws box here is now providing more granular entry points to statutes at large from the Law Library of Congress's digital collection. So within each page, you'll find access to different entry points for the statutes at large digital collection, including breakdowns of individual laws, as well as the entire volume of statutes at large as a digital item. And these are curated per the Congress. So as opposed to a collection level link, this is specific to the Congress that you're looking at. And links like this are present on Browse by Congress from 1950, which is the 81st Congress, going all the way back to 1789, or the first Congress. And so between all of these different enhancements, Congress.gov is now providing access points to law texts ranging from 1789 to the present, which is a really exciting milestone to reach. The Congress.gov team continues to collaborate with data partners at GPO, the Law Library, and across the legislative branch to bring even better law texts and data into Congress.gov. And on a related note, I'm also happy to say that the team is exploring bringing statute compilations into Congress.gov, also with that beta USLM text. So please keep an eye out for additional enhancements related to that and all of these great text collections. And that's all from me. Thanks. I'm going to hand it over to Jean Dennis.
Great. Thanks, Emily. And I'm especially happy that you managed to get us back to the PowerPoint. So many, many thanks to you. I'm going to speak briefly about the Constitution Annotated Online. For those of you who are not familiar with the Constitution Annotated Online, the Constitution Annotated, which is a 3,000-page volume, has served as Congress's official record of the Constitution for more than 100 years. And it's the outgrowth of a project that Congress began back in 1797 when it first passed legislation to provide for a copy of the Constitution to be printed and provided to every member. So we have a very lengthy and esteemed history. By the 1830s, those copies of the Constitution included indexes. By the 1870s, they included lists of Supreme Court decisions interpreting the various provisions. And in 1921, Congress passed legislation requesting that a Constitution be prepared with annotations of those Supreme Court decisions. That is our Constitution Annotated. In 2019, the library launched the Constitution Annotated Online, which is a digital version of what had now grown to be a 3,000-page book. As you can tell, our popularity continues to grow year over year. Since we've launched, we've had more than 90 million page visits and over 48 million views. No, I had that reversed. 90 million page views, over almost 50 million visits. So this is a very, very popular product. One thing, and I hope you are all able to pick up one of these on your way in, a pocket Constitution. What we've discovered is that a lot of people, much as they like our digital version, also like having paper versions of the Constitution around. These pocket Constitutions include QR codes, which you can see here, which will take you directly to the Constitution Annotated Online. So not only does the pocket Constitution serve as a Constitution, pocket Constitution, but it's also a pocket Constitution annotated in that you have access to everything that is in our volume and in the website just by using this. And they're going to be available for sale in the library bookstore in a few months, so please be sure to pick up your free copies today with them. Another thing that we have done, before I get to that, one other thing I just want to mention is that our wonderful colleagues, the National Library Services, is making recordings of the Pocket Constitution, which we will have by early next year, so that everybody, even those people who are visually impaired, can enjoy the Pocket Constitution, as well as they will be recording the Constitution Annotated Online. So everything will become available for those people who do not have the ability to be able to read it easily, or for people who just prefer to listen to text as opposed to reading it. We also launched last year a Constitution podcast series. It's called Our Constitution. This has also become a very popular product for the upcoming, went the wrong direction, sorry about that. For the upcoming year, in honor of the 250th anniversary of the Declaration of Independence, we will be having a podcast series that goes from grievance to self-government, and it's going to explore all the aspects of the grievances that Thomas Jefferson listed in the Declaration of Independence and show how those problems of government informed the framers in how they establish provisions of the Constitution. So for those of you who want to celebrate the 250th anniversary of the Declaration of Independence with the Library of Congress and the Constitution annotated online, we will have this program for you in probably about 2 months. We'll be releasing it. And with that, I will turn it over to Andrew. So thank you all very much.
Thank you, CRS. And let's stop here now for our first Q&A session of the day. If you're online, please enter your questions into the Q&A box on Zoom, and your questions will be read aloud. If you're here in person, raise your hand and wait for the microphone to come so everybody can hear what you have to say. Let's start. We have one on Zoom.
We do have an online question. Can you hear me?
Not through the mic.
There we go. All right. We'll post this for our online attendees today, but one of our viewers was interested to hear again the information about how to participate in an interview for Congress.gov users for our research. If we could go back over that, I think our online attendees would appreciate it.
So we're looking for 7 to 10 volunteers, and it'll be roughly 60 minutes. Here's the slide. So it's user-research-info@loc.gov with your name, email address, and whether or not you're a government employee. Any other questions? All right.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for these presentations. I had a question about the appropriations bills table on the CRS maintained appropriations bills table. I've noticed that at times, it's an incredibly useful and comprehensive product, but I've noticed at times that when the Appropriations Committee work their ways through the subcommittee bills and reports, that they're often not available until after they've been reported by the full committee. I think this is a consequence because the data comes from GPO, and since the bills haven't been introduced at that point, the library usually takes the bill, that information from GPO, which is what's creating this gap. In other circumstances, the library has been able to take information from other official sources like docs.house.gov. I was wondering if there's going to be, I'd like to express an interest in having the appropriation subcommittee bills and reports made available on Congress.gov at the same time they're made publicly available by appropriators and not waiting until it's officially introduced later on.
Thank you for this feedback. I don't know if anyone wants to have any response to this, or we'll make a note, and that's exactly what we want to have, lots of good feedback like that here.
Thank you for the very interesting presentation. We would hope or assume that providing greater access to information in general should increase the quality of decisions that are being made, or at least the efficiency with which those decisions are being made. Obviously, our expectation is that the better work you do, the better off decisions that will be made here on Capitol Hill are. I'm wondering, however, even though I know that quality of decision-making, efficiency of decision-making are very difficult things to measure, what, if any, efforts have you made or could you make to actually measure the effectiveness of the work you're doing in terms of the outcomes with decision-making, either its quality or its efficiency? How do we know whether or not these things that appear to be wonderful actually are?
That's actually a really good question. I don't have a specific answer for how we can measure the impact. Things that we do to try to guide us for the website is host feedback forums like this. We also post on the pages of the website places for feedback. We also try to analyze our metrics to see how things are doing, to see kind of what drives people to come and find out more information about Congress and about what's on Congress.gov. We're doing things like the feedback the user research effort as well as another way to try and gather what users think of the website. But it's a very interesting question, but I don't know a very specific way for us to articulate like exactly how we could quantify that. But it's something for us to think about.
Hi, so I'm a civic tech entrepreneur from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, and I'm interested in using technology to basically to increase transparency in the government, because I think with more accessibility to information about the government, it just makes it more possible for for American citizens to have input in the government. And I think that so I guess my question would be that is the source code to Congress.gov, the website, is the source code free and open source? I was wondering because if there's a repository out there, then it would open up the possibility for anyone, some nerd with free time, to fork the repository and make modifications to it. Basically, this idea that you can fork the government and do it better. In software engineering, especially in free and open source projects, there's this idea that people will just do work because they like it, because it's fun. It's like, we're nerds. I know, we're kind of weird. So yes, I guess that's my question.
So one of the things that we've been working on the last 3 years has been our API to provide data to Congress.gov accessible for developers or development projects for people to use. But I don't know that we've set up the whole website as a way that people could fork and do that. But I don't know that we've actually had this as a comment before, so I think we'll take this down and think about this as another possible avenue. But for now, the API is the best way to start to get at the data for developers to kind of do things on their own or as well.
Check. Hello. I think pairing off of the Philly coders idea, bulk downloads of api.congress.gov would be really nice if you could package up maybe, I know US code, you can download a full title at a time or different release points at a time as a large tarball or zip file maybe. That may be one means of simplifying access to all of the legislative records at once. Aside from this, I had a specific problem about the CRS collections. I'm curious if you can download some kind of description of those interactive graphics using the API. Are those included in the document that the API provides? I see a small head shake over here.
I'm going to defer to Andrew, who is our API expert.
Currently, no. We provide the refer URL to the website. I think that there were some conversations about the size of things and how that would impact the API. But you can always submit a Git issue, and we can review that with our developers.
Are there any other Zoom questions at this point?
He also had a question about bulk download.
Maybe add that to the Git space, because that's another place where we regularly review for feedback and then turn those into development tickets. And then we'll think about that as well as if.
Hi, thank you. Congress.gov currently shows related bills within Congresses, but it would be great to see how these ideas I develop over time, basically. So could they show ideas from past Congresses, or bills from past Congresses that are related to legislation you're looking up?
I think this is something we've had a little bit of feedback on lately, more recently, and it's something that we've been looking into. One of the things that for Congress.gov, we aggregate a lot of data, different data sources, and we normally have official data sources for that. So we analyze in the current Congress what's related. But it's something we're looking into and trying to think about and trying to analyze what might be a good data source for us to do something like that. But it's a bigger picture kind of project.
Hi, this is a broader question. Boolean search is a really flawed tool. Is the library doing any investigation into another way to look at that issue?
We regularly do sprints, and then every 3 sprints we do a sprint that's more of a tech analysis sprint where we look at some future options, some different ways to do what we're doing, like is there a new tool that's a better tool? And so we regularly try to analyze what are some other options, and then if we find based on that investigation that works out and it makes the website better, we'll then incorporate that later on into the website.
So I developed a system based on set theory, which eliminates almost all the problems with Boolean search. Is there anybody I can talk to about that?
You could share some feedback through the feedback form on Congress.gov. I don't know someone specific right now off the top of my head.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, if you go ahead and submit your feedback, and we'll take a look at it.
Any more from Zoom?
We have a few questions coming from Zoom. The first is timely. What could be the impact of a government shutdown on the services that Congress.gov provides, such as the API? Mr. Karamanis can answer that.
Mr. Karamanis has to put his glasses on for this one. We want to thank... the API shutdown. During a shutdown, in the event that there is a shutdown, Congress.gov and the API are considered essential services and will remain available. All right, and there was a question about the Constitution annotated? Yeah, so there was the question is there was an outage about a month ago in the Constitution annotated that caused a few citizens to post on social media that the site was down, and basically they're asking for some details on what happened. So we want to thank everyone for their understanding and support during the brief disruption Conan experienced back in August. As you heard earlier from Gene, Conan is the result of a partnership across several teams across the library. It was that teamwork that helped us discover a step in the Conan publishing and reviewing process that had been missed, which resulted in the content going offline. And it was that teamwork that got the full content back online as quickly as possible. We know Conan is very popular, but that experience was a good reminder for us just how many people like it and use it regularly. We're refining our content creation process and our review process to make sure this doesn't occur again. And we know that a lot of you in this room have educated others to talk about how important the data is on our websites, and we really appreciate you advocating for us.
Any other Zoom
Thank
questions?
you. Yes. One individual is interested in the podcast that Gene shared, From Grievance to Self-Government. Could we repeat how our users can listen to the podcast when it launches?
Yes, if you go to the library's website for podcasts, it's right there. It's also, you can get to it using the Constitution Annotated website. And if you go to the introductory section, point 9, there will be a list of all the podcasts. And if you click on that link, that will bring you to the library's website page where they have all the wonderful, wonderful podcasts that the library provides, because there's a whole bunch of them. But thank you.
And also, if you have Apple products, it's in the podcast. It's in the podcast app. You can search for it there too and listen to it.
Yeah, just comment first. Just want to say, when I first started using Library of Congress Search about 51 years ago, it was set-based. Thank you very much for converting to Boolean. It really is a wonderful improvement, although there are great advantages to set as well. The other thing, just sort of an odd question, when I go to find out what the law is, I end up going to Cornell, not to the Library of Congress. Am I doing the wrong thing? And when might I hope that the Library of Congress would offer me an interface with the power and the ease of use of something like Cornell for finding out what is the law, as opposed to what were the laws, in other words, the documents?
Anyone want to answer this one? One thing, the things that you find easier to use in Cornell, it would be great if you share that with us and let us know in our feedback forms so we can try to analyze and see if that's something we could take steps to make Congress.gov more efficient or more user-friendly. But for their purpose and our purpose, they are a little bit different, so they're just set up a little bit different as well. I mean, part of Congress.gov is what is current active in process legislation, and it's letting people know across the Hill and the general public what's going on in Congress today. And a lot of the stuff on Cornell is things that have already become law, like things that are more established and set up. So it's a different time points for the information. They could also use the US Code's website. There are other things that they can use as well, besides just Cornell. But, all right, next.
Hi, I'm here from the Internet Archive, and I have a question about your digitization projects, which is essentially how can we help? I was wondering if, with respect to the US serials in particular, if anyone has evaluated whether the offer of free help from the Internet Archive could accelerate the current goals. I believe it's set for 2030 to finish that project, and we're wondering if we can help speed that up.
Yeah, the 2030 deadline is for U.S. Supreme Court records and briefs. So the serial set has already concluded. We only have about 100 problematic volumes that we're working through here that are brittle or have fold-outs. But yeah, serial set is pretty much done. But thank you. Feel free to reach out if you'd like to collaborate in some other ways.
Thank you. Another online question?
Can you hear me? Oh. I'm going to read the question as written. Since most bills no longer move through regular order, they never generate alerts for a markup or committee vote or even a floor vote. Instead, most bills become law via inclusion in a larger piece of legislation, such as an omnibus spending bill. This makes it difficult to know whether a bill eventually does become law. So does Congress.gov provide a way to find out whether a bill has been rolled into another larger bill?
So the best place to look for things like that is the Related Bills tab on Congress.gov. And that can help guide you to if it's been rolled in, if it's been completely identified as something that's incorporated into a different piece of legislation. It's Barbara here. Do you want to answer? You want to answer anymore? Okay. Okay, that's it. Next question. Just make a loop around to you.
Yeah, sorry, I didn't know if there was a phantom question behind me. So I had actually a question. I want to go back to the serial set for a second, just because something was confusing there for just a moment. But the question that I had was actually has to do with the Law Library of Congress reports. That you guys have done a tremendous job of going back to the 1950s and digitizing them. Are there plans to make them available through the Congress.gov search engine as opposed to where they are separately? And the question I had just on the serial sets was, my understanding is that the scanning, like you said, is basically done, but that there's still the work of providing metadata for it and that there would still be time before they actually all go up online, although I think you've been doing it as you go along. I'd just love to be updated on that because I thought it was going to be a lot longer than maybe it will be.
So all of the metadata work, the cataloging, the authentication, the placing of the seal is all done by GPO. And so all of our digitized collections go to GPO. They create the MARC records, and then we upload them to our website, and they do so the same on their website. So the digitization is done, except for the last 100 or so volumes. So right now we're just building the queue to load them up with the full records and searchability features on our website, and as is GPO on GovInfo. So I don't have a sense of how long it will take to have all of them up. So as GPO is our major dependency here, so as they're able to provide the final versions, then we both upload at the same time. But that's the most I can give you, sorry.
And as far as law library reports on Congress.gov, we've, over this last year, spent a lot of time working on the CRS reports on Congress.gov that we wanted to try and get that in a really good state. And then I think we haven't really had many conversations about are we going to put those on Congress.gov or not. That's good feedback, and we'll take that into consideration. Any other questions?
Hi, thank you. Yeah, so we work with a lot of like search and annotation for a lot of like tax law and things like that. And so the USLM structure, as well as a lot of the metadata, is really useful for us. We really appreciate like the mods file and the premise data and all of that. And one thing that would additionally be really helpful for us is there anywhere where the metrics of the documents are published where like any usage of the API, like can we see metrics on user interactions with the API itself, or is that published anywhere, or almost like a meta like API for usage of the API itself?
I don't think we've publicly put anywhere the usage metrics. There was a Congressional hackathon last week or 2 weeks ago. One of the things that I presented on there was about the API, and over the last 3 years, when the API launched in beta 3 years ago, during this time there have been over, I think it's like 1.3 billion API calls. So there's a huge volume of people who've been using and calling the API. But that's really the only metrics that I have off the top of my head. And this is the last question for this portion of the Q&A.
Hi, I have, I guess, sort of two questions. For the Senate Executive Journal, currently only available through the 43rd Congress, is there a plan to add more volumes? And then second, with the transition from Century of Lawmaking to Congress.gov, we found searching the predecessor publications to be difficult in its new format. Is there any plans to work on improving?
Century is definitely something we want feedback on, because it was taking a 30-year-old product, the Century of Lawmaking, and trying to modernize it and incorporating it nicely into Congress.gov. There have been a lot of parts where we can kind of map it to what Congress.gov looks like, but there's also been a lot of challenges with the developers trying to figure out how to get all of that older data into the more structured format of Congress.gov. So please provide us any and all feedback on it, because we're working on it and it's still actively in development. We really consider, I think on 2 parts, we have places where it says at the top now to please provide us with feedback on it as well. So if you notice things that we can make better, we're still working on that and working our way through to make that a better user experience. And we're also trying to figure out ways for the parts that we don't have the full text of, either to OCR or use the Law Library intern group to help provide full text, which will then eventually go into our Solar search database, which should hopefully make it an even better user experience than what it was on the older site. But it's a process that we're working our way through. Yeah, there's a feedback bar across every page except the home page. It's on every page to the top right, and it says feedback, and you can share. So, yes. We want it to be better too. We're working on it. Thank you for all of your questions. And it was a great discussion. At this time, we're going to be joined by 2 people who are at the very center of the legislative process: Kevin McCumber, the clerk of the House of Representatives, and Jackie Barber, the Secretary of the Senate.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm really delighted to be here with you for this public forum. Whether you're a student driving into a diving into a research project, a civic tech developer building a new tool, or simply someone who wants to keep a closer eye on Congress, thank you for joining us, both here in the room and online. I'm also grateful to the Library of Congress for inviting me to be a part of this conversation. The library's leadership and commitment to making legislative information more accessible is critical to building trust in how Congress works. As many of you know, and has been said here today, there's a strong partnership between my office, the Congress.gov team, and the Senate. The data provided by the Clerk of the House and the Secretary of the Senate forms the backbone of Congress.gov. We share a common goal, making the legislative process as transparent as possible. I can say that as a regular user myself, Congress.gov has become an indispensable tool. I can think of several times I've been on the floor and needed to check the status of a bill for a member, so I pulled up Congress.gov on my phone, got what I needed in a mere seconds, and was able to provide the information to the member. That's the kind of reliable access that matters to all of us. And when you realize that Congress.gov isn't just a public resource, it's an essential tool for those of us working on the inside to keep the House functioning smoothly. Today, I'm especially excited to highlight the addition of House roll call votes to Congress.gov. While this vote data has long been published on the clerk's own website, managed by our legislative computer systems team, this expansion, especially adding roll call votes to the API, is a big step forward for programmatic access and for anyone who wants to use the data in new and innovative ways. The technical details are best left to Andrew. He'll share more on that later. But I do want to emphasize that this is an important milestone for all users, whether you're accessing the API or taking advantage of the enhanced search tools right on the Congress.gov site. And this is just the beginning. We're going to keep working closely with the Congress.gov team to expand the vote data available and to improve the ways you can search, download, and reuse House data. Finally, forums like this are where we learn the most. Your feedback, what's working, what's missing, what could be better, shapes what comes next. So thank you for being here today, for sharing your ideas, and for helping us continue to make Congress.gov stronger, more useful, and more open for everyone. Thank you.
Hello. For 236 years, the Secretary of the Senate has been responsible for keeping the legislative data of the Senate. This began with the first Secretary, Samuel Otis, who took the Senate minutes by hand and delivered them to the printers to be bound. We've come a long way since then. As one of the core functions of my office, I'm incredibly proud of the steps that we have taken along with our partners in the House and the Library of Congress to move legislative information to the 21st century. Starting in 1995 with the launch of Thomas, the Secretary's office has been working with the Library of Congress to make official legislative information available online publicly, evolving to the advanced system that Congress.gov is today. Congress recognizes that agencies like the Library of Congress would need common information standards when, in the 1997 Legislative Branch Appropriations Act, it directed the Secretary of the Senate and the Clerk of the House to develop these standards. Today, these standards, XML, and the tools built to support them form the foundation for drafting and publishing of legislative measures on Congress.gov. We have come a long way since the first legislative measure was published using these standards in 2001, but today virtually all bills, resolutions, and amendments considered by Congress are created and published both in print and online using XML. Through many iterations and much hard work, we are now able to provide the public with an ever-expanding, accurate, timely, intelligent, and varied information on legislative activities and actions occurring in the Senate floor, which include daily data sets on members, committees, nominations, treaties, executive actions, measures, and amendments, and we are continuously improving. With the support from our partners at the Sergeant-at-Arms, we recently modernized how Senate data is provided to the library. We've establishing a more robust foundation that will enable even further growth, such as legislative and session information. The Secretary is dedicated to further strengthening our work in the with our legislative branch partners in the House and the Library of Congress, and with our public stakeholders, all of you, to find ideal ways of sharing the richest information possible consistent with the Senate rules. I'm excited for the future work we will accomplish together to keep the American public informed of official Senate information through mediums such as Congress.gov. I want to thank our House partners, including the Clerk of the House, Kevin McCumber, and the library leadership, and my talented teams led by John Pollack and Aaron Shapiro for their continuous work to enable public access to the legislative record. Thank you all for being here today.
All right, thank you so much for those very kind words. At this time, please welcome to the stage CRS Legislative Data Specialist Andrew Ryder and Secretary of the Senate's Aaron Shapiro.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's great to be here. So the first part of my presentation is going to go over a little bit of what Robert touched on, but I just want to talk a little bit about the technical side of the House roll call votes on Congress.gov. Currently, the scope of coverage is from the 118th Congress, which starts on January 3rd, 2023, to the present. Like the clerk just indicated, we do hope to add historical data to this collection, starting with the 117th Congress and moving backwards. Our House roll call votes are searchable from the homepage search bar. You can also use the query builder or the command line. We did update our search tools recently to include a bunch of different vote metadata that you can use to query those. Search results will consist of individual House roll call votes with the date, Congress, vote number, the vote question, vote type, and result displayed. You can select a search result from the list to view an individual House roll call vote, and you can also filter votes by member, party, state, and how each person voted. We provide a roll call votes by U.S. Congress list currently. Currently, for the 118th and 119th Congress, those links will stay on Congress.gov, but we have linked to the clerk's website for older Congresses so that you can still access that data easily. So now I'm going to try to get to Congress.gov and hope this works so that we can do a quick demo. So one of the best things about this is that on our member profile pages, you can now, for different representatives, get their House vote data for the 118th Congress to the present. So to do that, you can go to the member profile page, you scroll down, and under member activity, you'll see House roll call votes. There are additional filters for the Congress, and currently the Chamber of Origin is always going to be House, so there is a filter for that, but there's only one option. One of the really nice things about this is that you can download the results, and you can also save or get alerts and save those so that you get the updated votes delivered to your inbox. Additionally, one of the really nice things here is for each vote that member voted on, we have a member vote result element in the overview. And if you click on the vote, you'll get sent to the detail page, which has a lot of different information, starting with a really nice overview with the vote date, the vote question, the description, the vote type, and then the result. And we break the result down by party. And then there's a really nice visualization in the middle of this page that shows how each party voted, and also all the yays, the nays, the present, and the not voting statistics as well. And then in this last part of the detail page, it shows a breakdown of how each member voted, and then their party, their state, and their vote. You can break this down by state. So for example, for Alaska or a different state, such as California, which has a really large delegation, and you can further then filter that by party as well, or by vote result. So let's give this a go. So you'll see all of these different representatives and how they voted for that particular state. Additionally, you can download the results. It will download into a CSV file. It will show how each member voted.
And then the second part of my presentation is I want to talk a little bit about our API and how we added the votes in a beta in collaboration with the clerk's office. This has been a really exciting project to work on. It's been a real highlight. And we have several different endpoints, including a list level, and then further endpoints that you can filter down by Congress, Congress in session, Congress session, and if you know the vote number, and then Congress session vote number, and then how each member voted on that particular vote. So if we use this one as an example, let me just put my key in there. Just give it a minute. You'll get a ton of different really useful metadata, including the date of the vote, when the vote was updated in the system, the piece of legislation associated with it, along with the session number, the roll call vote number, the vote question, the type, and then the result. We also provide a source data URL to the clerk's website, and then we also provide a URL to Congress.gov. And then we do provide data for how each member voted, along with their BioGuide ID. So you will see every member, their vote result, their party, their state, and then of course their name and the vote that they cast. And then I'm gonna... Okay. And then for my last part, I just want to hit home all the different Congress.gov API resources we have. We have a GitHub repository where users can view our changelog, all our upcoming changes to the API, enhancements, bugs, fixes, etc. We're on a 3-week development cycle, and we post everything pretty early so that you can keep track of that. We also provide Python and Java sample client code. And then, of course, you have the ability to create an issue in the repository for any feedback, enhancements, or bugs that you find. We're happy to help and answer those or investigate any enhancement requests. We also provide user documentation for each endpoint, including the House roll call votes and CRS products. Those are our newest collections. You can see different definitions for each element and expected values. And then, of course, you can sign up for an API key on api.congress.gov. And with that, I will hand it over to Aaron.
Thank you, Andrew. My name is Aaron Shapiro. I'm the Senate Webmaster and Director of Web Technology. Great to be here with you all today. Thanks for joining us. I'm here to talk about, well, before I get into this, I want to express my deep gratitude that I have to all my colleagues, and that I get the pleasure to highlight some of these accomplishments that we've made over the last year. But it is a whole team of people, not only at the Senate, but the Library of Congress, GPO, and the House that make this all possible. They are all very committed and dedicated. We have been working together for a long time and have well-established relationships that make this all possible. So again, you know, it's a great privilege to be able to present this, but I am just one piece of a very large operation that has made this possible today. So I'm going to talk to you about 2 different data feeds and the story of how they came to be. The first one is this Days in Session, which is a page on Congress.gov. And for a long time, this has been populated through CRS and means of using various resources. But the Senate parliamentarian recently made a request to provide official information to this page. So we worked with our partners at the SAA and CRS, Library of Congress, to devise a way to provide this information. We had recently completed a modernization project, so we had a established infrastructure that we added to, that we started producing a report in XML. The exciting thing about this is that it comes directly from our journal clerk, which is the source of this information is recorded officially. We were able to make some large steps in progressing the timely delivery of this, whereas literally the Senate adjourns, the journal clerk will enter this information, press a button, this XML gets generated, gets sent through several systems, and is immediately made available to Library of Congress for use and inclusion. So it's a big step forward in terms of the timeliness of delivery of this official information. You can also see it's very granular in nature. It provides not only session days, but legislative days. We spent a lot of time working through the nuances of those to have a richer data set available. A great thing about this was that we were able to leverage these advancements for the Library of Congress to also use on our own systems. So for a long time, the Senate Library would manually update the convene and adjourn times of the Senate based on when they completed their work for the day. This was another task built on many other tasks that they have. So with this new feed becoming available, we were able to repurpose it to automate this information to now immediately update Senate.gov, also Webster, our internal website, with this convene and adjourn times. We had to go through many technical challenges as well. Keeping counts of things like votes is a lot easier for a human to do when you don't have to involve the complex scheduling of the Senate and going through different days and exactly when that occurs. So we were able to, take a request that was for the library and then find benefit for ourselves as well. The next data set I'm going to talk about is something you see on the halls of Congress. Both the House and the Senate have the lights and buzzers on their clocks and star bars. This is something that started in the 1960s by the AOC. And these signals are sent out from the dais. The parliamentarian or the clerks will press a button. It sends one of these various signals. And for a very long time, the only way that was available was by physically seeing one of these clocks, very limited base. So what we were able to do with working with the AOC and some very smart individuals, create an API of this information that is now available only internally to the Senate, but we're exploring ways to expand this with our Capitol Hill partners to further inform the happenings of Senate in real time. And this was accomplished through using some very advanced technology, but also some elementary circuitry as well. As you can see, we have what's on the back end of the clocks. These are connected through different networks, but are air-gapped for security reasons. We take the signal through the voltage readings, and then we transmit that through dedicated servers that are load balanced, and then create an API. This is already being leveraged on apps internal to the Senate, as well as our internal websites, and expanded in use. It's made available on a nonpartisan basis. And as I previously mentioned, we're now exploring ways to send this signal to the Library of Congress for potential inclusion on Congress.gov and other mediums. So, thank you. Kirsten?
All right, now we'll hold our second Q&A session. If you have any questions or comments about what you've heard from Aaron or Andrew, please enter them into the box on Zoom or raise your hand for the microphone. Okay, one on Zoom.
We have several on Zoom and some from earlier today as well, so we'll work through those. Might it be possible to get congressional election candidate and fundraising data added to the Congress.gov API?
So candidate fundraising. So far, candidates aren't things that are in Congress.gov. We get, when someone gets elected, the information from the House or the Senate, and we add it to the website. But as far as candidates, we don't have, and the same for the second part of the question as well.
Fundraising data.
Fundraising data. Do you have another question?
I have another online
Okay.
question. Could the Congress.gov API be a platform that could develop programmatic options to submit constituent correspondence and or constituent polling data to representatives?
So one of the feedback we get sometimes is sometimes people want to give feedback to their members through Congress.gov. One of the things that we did on Congress.gov was make it easier for someone to find out who their member is, as well as adding contact information to that member. So if you type in your address, you can find your member, and then once you find your member, you can click the contact and then provide feedback that way. But as far as putting it in the API, I don't think that's quite the same as what the Congress.gov API is for, which is more providing the data that's on Congress.gov. Any in the room questions?
Thank you. Less a question than a feature request. I work for a commercial provider of legislative tracking services, and we're seeing a huge demand for hearing video, committee hearings, meetings, anything we can get. And I know the API does link to that where it's available, but the source data is a little bit of a mess. It's spread across Vimeo, YouTube. I think the Senate has like an embedded player. If there was some way where there could be one owner, one source of that, and particularly access to the raw data, I think that could really improve some of the interesting things people are doing with that data or trying to do.
I think video has been one of the things that we've constantly looked for ways to improve and try and integrate. We've worked a lot with the Senate and the House to do different things. So as we make improvements, that it's definitely an area that we're interested in and we keep working on. More from Zoom?
Yes. One person says they're excited to see that roll call votes will be integrated into Congress.gov. They know sometimes it takes considerable time for the rolls to be posted to the clerk's websites. Should we expect similar timeframes for their availability on Congress.gov? I think one of our...
I can answer that. This is Kirsten Gullickson. I'm with Legislative Computer Systems in the clerk's office. And the answer is yes. You will expect the same timeframes. There is a QA process that the tally clerks on the House floor do before they release those votes, so it's that time frame is going to continue. But thank you for that question.
Another in-person question?
It's great to see the roll call votes available that are happening on the floor. There's of course work that happens in the committees as well. Could you talk about efforts to make committee data in the House and the Senate, including the roll call votes, publicly available, and whether that's something that you'll try to include in Congress.gov? Thanks.
Hi, Kirsten from the clerk's office again. We recently received Modernization Initiative account funds, which is a special account that the House created because of the Select Committee on Modernization. We received money to start a committee activity portal, which will be working with House committees for them to record their committee vote data as actual data, or their committee votes as data. Right now, when you go to docs.house.gov, the committee repository side, or you look in a committee report, either through a link on Congress.gov or because the committee report is on GovInfo, that often is not in data. So we're excited to be working on that. I don't have a time frame when we will actually have vote data available in as vote data as data and machine readable data. I don't have a time frame, and we have yet to decide on where we'll start. Whether it'll be a product that'll be available on the House websites and transferred to Congress.gov, or we'll just start right with Congress.gov. We certainly have the infrastructure to do that, which is certainly something to celebrate.
Thank you. This is Aaron Shapiro. Thank you for the question, Daniel. We're exploring this on the Senate side as well. We're looking for a way to have it be structured uniformly across the committees. That's one of the big struggles right now, exploring if there are common tools that can be used to make this in a structured format that would make the delivery possible. As always, we are implementers, so ultimately this is a policy decision that needs to be made, but we are looking at it on the technical side. Thank you.
Anyone?
Another online question here touching on committees. This individual says, I would love to see better integration in tracking hearings. I get the weekly hearing compilation email, but any hearings added after Monday at 9:30 or so do not get pushed and are easily missed. Could this be something better shared for users?
I think that's an excellent comment, and I think it's something we can look into. Because I get the same email, and it's a great resource for everything that's going to happen that week, but we do have to have the data by the time that email goes out.
Hello, I remember a few years ago I had some chances to collaborate with the Senate Appropriations Committee, and they had some coders through the committee who were building on-premise apps to help the committee members explore line items of the programs that were appearing on the appropriations bills. That was fabulous as far as, you know, a scrappy couple coders in the committee being able to put that together in a Python Django app and then make use of it day to day. But that is also something that you really have to dig if you are going to access the same granular appraisal of an appropriations bill through Congress.gov resources. So are there other ways that we can think about scary appropriations bills? Maybe, or look at them using a different lens of line item, year-over-year changes, source and sync kind of flows. Thank you.
I think that's an excellent comment and an excellent thing for us to examine. I certainly know on the House side that the Appropriations Committee is continuing to analyze what tools they need to do that work, because obviously the staff do a lot of work manually, and how can we programmatically help them? And then how do we bring that out to the public? Those appropriations bills can be very difficult to read and understand, and so us examining how do we surface that information and how do we tag it more appropriately in our XML. Excellent comment, and certainly something that we think about every day, but we're not quite there yet.
Any more Zoom questions?
We do. We have one very technical question. What are our plans to implement W3C semantic data standards? And the individual lists a lot of examples: RDF, JSON LD, OWL ontologies, et cetera, for faster, easier search, and added guardrails for AI and large language model platforms, as the EU has done for its government sites.
Do you want to answer that one?
That's like, Jim, you're going to take that? Okay, awesome. I also want you to bring that question back up when we have our representative from GPO here. She'll have unless you want to take it now. Okay. Jim, go ahead, Jim.
Kristen didn't want to take that. Yeah, we get these kinds of questions about a lot of our data sets at the library, not just the congressional data sets. And like most things, it requires funding to do the R&D activities. So these are definitely areas that we're interested in looking into. Right now, we're waiting for things like appropriations to happen so that we can keep the congressional process flowing at this point. But we're absolutely interested in performing research and how AI can help all of us help you.
I think we have time for one more question.
I guess it's me, I'm sorry. The question has to do with floor proceedings and incorporation of that information on Congress.gov. It's very hard to know what the House and Senate plan to do. The House has a weekly whip notice from the majority-minority that you can read. The Senate doesn't quite work that way. It works a little bit differently. You might get a notice for what's going to happen the next day sometimes, although it's subject to change. But that information, while it's linked to from Congress.gov, it's not on Congress.gov. So if you go to Congress.gov, you can see all the hearings that are happening today or all the hearings that are happening this week, but you wouldn't be able to see necessarily, here's what's anticipated on the floor. And I know this is something that appropriators had requested a report in 2023, I think. Has there been more discussion? Has there been more investigation? Like, what's the status of that? Thank you.
I think it's something we've definitely been getting some feedback on and been trying to think through. Like everything we talk about, we need good data sources, and you talked a little bit about the data source for this as well. So I think the more we have feedback on it, the more we'll continue to work with our data partners to see if there's something we can kind of try to work out to better incorporate that at some point in the future, but it would still be at some point in the future. All right, next up, Kirsten doesn't have to go very far. She was helping with the Q&A at the last part. So I'd like to invite her to share a little bit about the Congressional Data Task Force.
Awesome. Thank you, Andrew. As Andrew said, my name is Kirsten Gullickson, and I'm the coordinator of the Congressional Data Task Force. You've heard a few people mention that group. We are a dedicated group of people that try to make sure that congressional information is accessible. And like the clerk and the secretary said, we have a great partnership to make sure that we can get that data here to Congress.gov, and we get data to GovInfo, and we kind of are the folks in the background making sure that these things are implemented and done in the timeframes we can. And it's going to be really exciting because we're going to bring some folks up and hear about some things. But one of our partner agencies on the task force is GAO, and I'd like to bring up Mike Tenenbaum and Min-Soo Kim. They're from the GAO's Innovation Lab. They both are senior, make your way up. They both are senior data scientists, and they will share with us how they are using Congress.gov data. And then when they're done with their presentation, we'll bring some more members up of the task force to talk a little bit about data and formatted data, structured data. So I'm going to step off during your presentation. Look forward to hearing this.
Awesome. So, again, I'm Mike Tenenbaum, senior data scientist in the Innovation Lab at GAO. This is Min-Soo Kim, also a senior data scientist. We have the pleasure of talking to you about uses of the Congress.gov API. So what are we doing with congressional data at GAO? So let me talk about a couple of projects and then a couple of quick projects later. The first one starts at the beginning. So how do GAO audits get kicked off? Well, many of them get kicked off through mandates in legislation. And so GAO gets to read through all of the bills and find mentions of GAO where people have put Comptroller General or GAO or Government Accountability Office. And so we've built a system that pulls in data from Congress.gov every day and searches for all of these GAO mentions. And then separately, or as a subset of that, it searches for mandate language. So Comptroller General shall, as you can see on the screen. GAO must, will submit a report. All of this language that is indicative that there is going to be a mandate for GAO to do. And we then get to provide this data to our congressional relations team as just a list that they get an email every day, or as a dashboard that they can go and search for bills and keep track of things. We also allow them to, we built out the functionality to compare the language between different bills so that they can track it as it's going through the different processes in the House and the Senate. Okay, so that's the very beginning. That's how bills or how audits get to GAO. The opposite end of that is that you get the end. So what happens after GAO writes the report, and then hopefully, for some GAO reports, there are matters for congressional consideration that we put up and say, oh, it would be good if Congress could take a look at this thing. What do we do with that information afterwards? And then, theoretically, there's legislation that goes on afterwards and that sometimes mentions the bills or the GAO audits directly, and sometimes it does not. But so every year, GAO goes through and checks all the legislation for things that we think is related to a GAO report specifically, and then puts that into a list and then publishes that as part of our Performance and Accountability Report, the PAR. So as part of this, the Innovation Lab has built out a tool to try to surface places where we can match open matters to congressional data, or to legislative text specifically. So we've built out a website where you can see here that we're flagging one specific matter for congressional consideration that we want people to look at. And here we've semantically matched it to some legislative text that we got from Congress.gov And this is a process that we can run continuously. So instead of doing it all at once at the end of the fiscal year, we can do it continuously throughout the year, and our congressional relations team can surface those things as they're happening. Two other quick projects that I want to mention briefly. We have again, at the end of the audit report, we have a targeted outreach project. So when a GAO report is published, who does it get sent to? Does it get sent to committees and disseminated that way? Does it get sent to individual members? So we are working on compiling congressional member activities and interests so that we can better match GAO reports to specific members so that we can be, as the name implies, much more targeted in our outreach. The other place that we are using Congress.gov API endpoints is that we have an in-house generative AI chatbot capability that has the ability to call Congress.gov. So this is the first time we've done the middle. So we've done the beginning, we've done the end. Now, when people are actually working on audits in the middle, if they need access to legislative data, they can go to this generative AI system and have it talk to Congress.gov itself. So with that, let me point you to a couple of resources. There's always GAO's main website, which is, of course, the source for all of our reports and things. The Innovation Lab website was updated this year, and it now has much more up-to-date information on what we are doing, including the projects that I've listed out today. And there's contact information for the acting director if you need to reach her. Thank you.
Well, we're changing, and I invite the rest of the Congressional Data Task Force up. Oh, you're good. I was going to float you a question, but I won't. John, Lisa, Kimberly, you can come up, and I'll fill the space while we're moving around. So again, we are the Congressional Data Task Force. There is a lot more people than just those of us here, but I have... we're a partnership of the Library of Congress, a government publishing office, the House and the Senate, led by the Secretary's office and the Clerk's office. And then we have partner organizations like GAO, CBO, House and Senate Ledge Council, and others across the legislative branch. If you want to know more about us, the easiest search term is Congressional Data Task Force plus GPO Innovation Hub. And our website, our Innovation Hub, will come up, and you can see when we have meetings. They're very much like this forum, where they're open. Folks can come and ask questions. And we meet 3 times a year. We count this meeting and the hackathon that was last week, 2 weeks ago, on the 17th, as our third quarter meeting, because we're here and accessible. And if you have any questions that may not have gotten answered during the Q&A, just look for us up here afterwards. And again, thank you for all of you who are online. But anyways, we're the Congressional Data Task Force. I'm going to kick it off, and then Lisa and John are going to have some more remarks. I say a lot of this at our opening Congressional Data Task Force meetings, which I think most of you all know. While Congress has added modern tools along the way, the legislative process is really paper-driven, for the paper is still the official document of record. And the clerk and the secretary who you saw today, they certify by stamp and signature what is agreed upon by each chamber. And of course, we know our elected officials then sign that legislation into law. For decades now, we heard the secretary say 2001 is when we had our first XML draft. But for decades now, Congress has been adding a digital and electronic layer to a centuries-old paper process. And online means more than paper on screen. It means structured data. And so we have a shared schema. You've heard about it, United States Legislative Markup. We also have a Generation 1 schema called what we call the Bill DTD. We do have a small sub-team of the XML working group who are constantly envisioning the next iteration. We do this on Mondays. So the 4 of us are in a meeting on Mondays, data modeling. It's really exciting for us, but I think maybe in some other folks, maybe about 20 people, maybe sometimes at the height of the calls. But we're really in there creating that XML in data modeling. And thank you for my data partners when I get tired and I'm like, we're talking about what? How many layers down in this sub paragraph are we talking about? And but together we do good work, and you see it here on Congress.gov. So first, because I see your slide, I'm going to introduce John at first. I'm going to introduce John. He's from the Senate Secretary's office. He serves as the Director of Legislative Technology and Standards, and he's going to share briefly about the advantages of a digital-first structured content strategy for legislative documents.
My name's John Pollock. I work with a small team of developers in the United States Senate that develop tools around these XML schemas that we had talked about for publishing legislative data. I don't know how this thing works. Hey, look at that. That goes backwards. And that goes forwards. Great. So the point of these few brief slides, and I know we've been in here for a long time, we've talked about Congress.gov and data and all of that. What I wanted to do is talk a little bit about who eats and who feeds, right? So many of the people here use Congress.gov, either the API or the website, to get information, right? They're for lack of a better term, they're eating, right? They're consuming that data. It's in lots of different flavors. Some taste really good. Some doesn't taste so great. I work on the feeding end of things, where I try and think about the most appetizing way to provide congressional information to Congress.gov. So this is a higher level topic, and it's about digital first publishing. Digital first publishing is kind of a buzzword that is in the commercial space, and it talks about building your information flows to target all sorts of different media. And here we've talked about video, right? But we've also talked about documents. Some of the things that we haven't talked about are, little bits of information, tweets and such, or blogs, or all sorts of. So companies have realized that they need to have a digital first publishing strategy to make sure that they can target all of their different mediums and their different audiences as efficiently as possible. And I've tried to build, over the years that I've worked for the United States Senate, something that's similar, and it works in the Congress.gov case, and I think that it is a good model that we should try to emulate in other publications in the government. So, digital first publishing strategy prioritizes content creation delivery for digital platforms as well as print media. One of the beauties of the Government Publishing Office is that they are a great aggregator of information because they're publishing the government's information. One of the great challenges in that is that much of the data is created for a print process. And sometimes it's hard to repurpose that print information for publications online or in other media. However, if you decide that you want to first publish your information from a target agnostic standpoint, then there are a lot of efficiencies gained. You create your contents once, you can get it to publication faster, and it's more scalable. But some types of information, marketing information, things like that, it's one and done. You don't need a recipe. You just eat it and you move on. Government data tends to be it needs to relate to other government publications, to events in government, things like that. So legislative information is best represented in a structured format. If you have a digital first strategy with structured documents, things like document hierarchy, headings, paragraphs, tables, things like that, it's much easier to appropriately handle multiple scenarios for print, for internet, for responsive design on phones, for search engines finding specific keywords or terms. Editorial applications can do business rules at the beginning of the content generation process and the authoring process. Applications can parse different pieces of documents and store them in databases. And there were like developers and stuff in the audience who just love this stuff, right? You find that with congressional bills. You don't find that with the congressional record, right? The congressional record is printer formatted data, stripped of its codes and put online. Congressional bills are structured data that move through a publishing workflow. Electronic first, just like I just said, electronic first isn't digital first. Right? You can have electronic files that are not at all appropriate for using as the primary source of online published information. And secondarily, many of our processes rely on taking printer data, reformatting it, and then publishing it out online. It's not just printer data, it can be text from PDFs, it can be Word documents where you have styles that you're translating from. In all these cases, you have these derivative products that become the authoritative text. Even though Kirsten talked about the paper product being the authoritative thing, when you talk about electronic source authoritativeness, you need to at least have one source that you can point to and say, this is the authoritative electronic source. It's difficult when many transformations happen to target different media. Digital first in Congress, and I'll speed it up. So digital first in Congress, we do that now. We have, for measures and amendments, a Generation 1 DTD, USLM schema is coming down the road. We have authoring tools where people draft documents in the structured data formats from the start. And the templates that they have enable the kinds of capturing of hierarchy and terms that I had mentioned is so useful in the downstream publication of that data. The other cool thing is when you have XML, today we have the comparative print. You build your tools based on that structured data. We have the comparative print suite, which the House developed, and now the Senate has actually piloted. Eric Shapiro and I ran a pilot project to use that tool in the Senate. And what it does is it takes XML data from legislation, compares it to, somebody asked a question about how do I see current law on Congress.gov, and do I have to go to Cornell and stuff like that? Well, the statute compilations are coming, and it's a current set of law. And we use that in the comparative print suite because we have converted it to XML to do that kind of comparison. How is this piece of legislation going to affect current law? It's kind of cool. Can't do that with printer codes and stuff. And that's pretty much it. The point of mentioning all of this is that the more we can start at the beginning of the process with structured information for our government publications, the better products will be on Congress.gov and in other places. So thank you very much.
She's the program manager and the product owner for govinfo.gov.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you so much for the opportunity to speak with you all today. I'm Lisa LaPlante, and I'm the program manager for GPO's GovInfo system. I work in GPO's Office of Agency Strategic Programs and GovInfo. So I want to talk to you a little bit about our project for reports in USLM. So over the past year, representatives from GPO, the House, the Senate, and the Library of Congress worked on a project to model committee legislative reports and conference reports in the United States legislative markup schema. Many of you know that as USLM. So the project built upon our previous cross-organizational work on USLM for bills, public laws, the statutes at large, statute compilations, and the US Code. Now, this project was initiated in October of 2024, and then throughout 2025, the cross-organizational project team met weekly, as Kirsten mentioned, weekly. They were an hour and a half, sometimes even 2-hour-long meetings on Mondays, and we collaborated, we debated, and ultimately we reached consensus on data modeling and metadata decisions related to reports. So I'm very pleased to announce that the product of this effort is now available for public comment. So version 2.1.1 of the USLM schema, the schema review guide, updated CSS, and sample files for committee legislative reports and conference reports are now available in the proposed branch of GPO's USLM GitHub repository. So the schema review guide provides detailed information about the proposed changes, but some highlights are a new report doc type, document type as the basis for reports, the legislative report document type for the legislative committee reports, and elements for changes in existing law, legislative segments, joint explanatory statements, recommendations, supplemental views, and CBO cost estimates, and committee votes, just to name a few. Now, we encourage you to visit GPO's USLM GitHub repository to review those files, and please submit an issue if you have feedback. We like to make the schema and the materials available because we are interested to know what your feedback is, and so we can incorporate that into future versions of the schema. We also plan to include additional semantic modeling for the CBO cost estimates that are included in committee legislative reports. So that's what's coming soon and will be next on our roadmap. So on behalf of the Government Publishing Office and the Congressional Data Task Force, I want to thank our USLM vendor and our project team members from the House, the Senate, and the Library of Congress. Your dedication made this project a success. Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa. And I do want to echo Lisa's encouragement of people going out and looking at that USLM schema. As many of us know, committee reports and conference reports contain other documents. So it is really, really crucial, I think, for those of you who may want to reuse our data to just go ahead and take a look at that USLM and see how that committee votes, and particularly how amendments and how the bills are structured to be reprinted inside the committee reports, because we're starting to get into these documents that contain portions of other documents, and so that presents a challenge in and of itself. But great. Andrew, I'll hand it back over to you. We're open to questions, but I'll let you take over the moderating. Thank you.
No? Okay. Thank you so much for our panelists and for all the fantastic questions all afternoon long today. At this time, the Library of Congress Chief Information Officer, Judith Conklin, will share a few closing words.
Thank you. Well, I have some good news. I'm the last speaker, and it's very short. So, I do have the honor of being the Chief Information Officer at the Library of Congress, and I absolutely love it. So, thank you to each and every one of you who came today to join us. As you can see, we, the Library of Congress, are very proud to be the home of Congress.gov. You've already heard from Aslihan, the Law Librarian of Congress, Karen, the Director of Congressional Research Service, and now myself. This shows that we view Congress.gov as a true team effort at the Library of Congress. We are constantly collaborating internally at the library and within the Library of Congress, but also with our data partners in the legislative branch who you heard from. We take our responsibility to deliver authoritative legislative information very seriously. From the original Thomas and LIS systems to the newest functionality of Congress.gov, the API, technology has changed dramatically, and we are changing with it. We are thrilled so many people visit Congress.gov, and as innovations with AI and machine learning continue to advance at a rapid pace, we are proud to make official legislative data available to all. Even though technology changes quickly, our mission remains the same. When you visit Congress.gov, the information you see is objective, authoritative, and authentic. The partnership you've seen here today across the library and legislative branch data partners is only part of what makes Congress.gov possible. Your use of the site and feedback, as Lisa mentioned, that you provide make Congress.gov a better resource for everyone. We want to hear from you. Remember, after today's event, you can still use the feedback form on Congress.gov. On behalf of all of us at the Library of Congress, thank you for participating today, and have a great afternoon.